Thanks to Shreds for offering us another one riff a day challenge. This year I'm challenging myself to create one lesson riff each day, and I'm going to base those off of the fundamentals of music. Today's is going to focus on the self-assessment. While I was teaching at Seattle University, I discovered that the guitar players did not have as firm of a grasp on the fundamentals of music as the piano players did. And I found that making checklists was a good way to help my students stay on track, make sure I covered all the things that I thought they needed to know so that they could get the most out of their programs. I have a self-assessment PDF for you on my website. You can link in the bio or the description. And it'd be awesome if some of you would download that, fill it out, and post it, tagging me so I could get an eye on that, but I understand if that's not something you feel comfortable doing. The guitar is just a wonderful instrument where you can know a lot and play well, but you also can learn by feel and ear and also play well. So I'm just excited to offer this in case anybody happens to be interested in the fundamentals. Thanks to the Shudders who filled out their self-assessments and tagged me on IG. I took a look at them, and folks are at a variety of levels, which makes things more fun for me. I want you to hang on to those sheets because they'll help you plan your long-term goals and also help you measure your progress. And if one of your goals was to understand and apply the chromatic scale, this lesson is for you. If you're brand new to the chromatic scale, I want you to hop over to my website, watch the video that I've posted there, and you can also download the worksheets I've got. So you can work out the chromatic scale on paper first and then apply it to your guitar. I want you to take it up and down each one of your strings up to the 12th fret using sharps and back down using flats, just like I do in that video. And if you're already familiar with the chromatic scale and you want to use it, then these next two slides are for you. So this is a blues line in the key of C. I'm starting with the note C under my second finger on the low E string, and then I'm going to half step into the third, so I'm playing E flat, E, and then I'm going to continue to use that chromatic movement and walk all the way up to the fifth. So I'm going to play F, F sharp, G, and then I've got F, D, F, E, C. So you can see that chromatic movement right there. Now you can transpose this to the key of F very easily just by moving it down one set of strings. And wherever you start this riff, if you're using your second finger, that's going to be the name of the key you're in. So this is an idea I got from my friend John. Hi, John. John turned me onto this YouTube channel called Things I Learned from Barry Harris. And it's a great channel. I will link to it on my website under day 2. At any rate, the idea involves thirds, which you should be able to do before attempting this next part here. Because what we're going to do is we're going to add a chromatic note before each pair of thirds. So instead of C, E, we'll have B, C, E. Instead of D, F, we'll have C sharp, D, F. So we get this sound. I've got some PDFs for you on my website for the E minor and A minor pentatonic scales. One has you drawing in the note names on the fretboard, so if you're a little further along, you can start there. But if you're brand new to the pentatonic scales, I would start with one pattern and take a week on it and then learn another pattern, watch how they link together, and kind of take it from there. The one thing I want to say about scales is I view scales as recipes for sound. And I'm not a cook, so when I make food, I use those little spice packs, and they give you a general taste for whatever style you're going for. And that's how I view these scales. And when I look at somebody who really knows how to cook, they're pulling in all kinds of ingredients. And I wanted to stress this in terms of the chromaticism we were talking about yesterday. If you feel like you're limited with these box shapes, just try stepping out. Use your ears and step outside. If it sounds good, it is good. feeling stuck in my solos and everything feels like it's sounding the same, then I'll take a step back and really focus on rhythm. I believe that rhythm is the foundation of a musical phrase, and I back that up with the fact that you could play a whole solo with one pitch, and if the rhythm is very compelling, you'll have a great solo. So my first exercise for you is to use that backing track, that E minor backing track I've got on my website. Pick out just one pitch, so like that note E, the root note. Play that all the way through, but play like a drummer. It's going to be easier to access new rhythms if you're just playing one pitch. Sometimes that can really open up the doors. Then add 2 notes, and then 3, and so on. Kind of build your solos out from there. Another thing you can do is take a line from a solo you really like and just learn the rhythm of it, and then apply your own pitches to it. That'll get you out of your box as well. And then the third idea is to look at a drum book or maybe my method book and pull out a rhythm that's on the page there and apply that to your solo. In that example, I played Dyads, which means I was playing 2 notes at the same time. And if you understand music theory and you know your guitar neck, you could probably see that I was playing a lot of fourths, and then there was 1/3 in there as well. If you don't know music theory, the fourths and thirds, don't worry, we'll get there. But in the meantime, you can look at that E minor pentatonic PDF that I gave you the other day on my website and pull out the notes for 2 strings at a time going up the neck. So, for example, on the first 2 strings, in open position, we have open 3, open 3. So instead of playing those notes separately, I'm going to play them together. And then if you trace up the next patterns, you'll see that the fingering changes here because we're at a third, but I'm just following that worksheet there. And then you could take it down the guitar neck on the next 2 strings. I don't know, maybe that's a little advanced for some people, but that's how that exercise would work. This is a C major scale. Hopefully it should sound familiar. And I'm playing the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And I'm just going to have you take for granted that those are the notes that are in a C major scale. And when I play these particular notes on guitar in this order, it gives me that major scale sound. And as you can see, when I'm playing this, all I'm doing is following a pattern of half steps and whole steps on this string. So it doesn't involve a lot of music theory. It can mostly just involve your ear, which is how a lot of people figure this out initially. So I've got a whole step, a whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. And you can apply that pattern of half steps and whole steps to any string and any, I'm just using the same 3rd fret so it makes sense, but you can apply it anywhere and it'll give you that major scale sound. We're going to work this out on paper. So up at the top, I've listed the notes for the C major scale, and you just have to take my word for it that those are in fact the names of the notes for the C major scale. And we're going to analyze where those half steps are, and then we're going to apply that formula to all of the other starting notes to create all the rest of the major scales. So the distance from C to D is a whole step. The distance from D to E is a whole step. From E to F is a half step. So I'm just going to write a little reminder there. From F to G is a whole step. G to A is a whole step.
A to B is a whole step, and B to C is a half step. So I'm going to drop down a little reminder. And if you're having a hard time figuring out the difference between half steps and whole steps, I want you to go back to that chromatic scale worksheet I posted the other day and study that. All right, now let's construct the G major scale. Our first step is just to write out the natural notes in ascending order starting on G. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Second step is just to drop down those half step reminders because that's where our formula comes in to make these notes sound like a G major scale. Third step is we're going to analyze the distance between each pair of notes, and if it's not the correct half step or whole step, then we will adjust the scale to make that happen. So the distance from G to A is a whole step, so we're good. A to B is a whole step, we're good. B to C is a half step, so we're good. C to D is a whole step, we're good. D to E is a whole step, we're good. E to F is a half step, but we need a whole step. So I'm going to increase that note F to F sharp, and that creates the whole step we need between E and F sharp, between the 6th and the 7th, and the half step we need between the 7th and the 8th, or F sharp and G. Let's do the key of D. So first step is to draw in the natural note names in ascending order. So I have D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. Second step is just to draw in the formula. So I have a half step between the 3rd and 4th degrees, and the 7th and the 8th degrees, and that is what defines that major scale sound. And third step, we're just going to analyze and make any adjustments that are necessary. So D to E is a whole step, so we're good. E to F is a half step, and we need a whole step there. So I'm going to draw in an F sharp, and now we have the whole step we need between 2 and 3, and we also have the half step we need between 3 and 4. G and A is a whole step, so we're good. A and B is a whole step. B to C is a half step, so I'm going to increase that C to C sharp. Now I have the whole step I need between 6 and 7, and the half step I need between 7 and 8, or that C sharp to D. So I want to go over one more, which is the key of C sharp, because it's got some weird stuff in it. So the key of C has no sharps or flats in it. And if I increase that first note C to C sharp, then all of the other notes in the scale need to be raised as well in order for it to fit that formula. So we get this C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, that's one of the weird things, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B sharp, that's another one of the weird things. So E sharp sounds exactly like the note F, but it'd be impossible to have an F and an F sharp written in a key signature. And so we have to call that 3rd degree E sharp. And the same is true for that B sharp. That's the same sound as C, but we already have a C sharp in the key, and we can't notate a C natural and a C sharp in the same key.
When you were constructing your major scales yesterday, you may have noticed that each new key contains all of the previous key sharps plus one additional sharp. So the key of G contains F sharp, the key of D contains F sharp and C sharp, the key of A contains F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, and so on. And there's an order to these sharps. I use that phrase, fat cats go down alleys eating bread, to help me remember them. You just take the first letter of each word in that phrase. So if somebody said, maybe they signaled to me across the bandstand, we're playing this song and, waving 5 fingers, that would tell me that we're in the key of B. And I know that because I'm thinking the order of sharps, so F, C, G, D, A. And the last sharp is A sharp. And if you take A sharp up a half step, then you get the name of the key, which is B. So a lot of times musicians will signal to each other if a key has 2 sharps in it, they'll do this, which means the key of D, F sharp, and C sharp. When you write out the keys from a key that has 1 sharp to 2 sharps to 3, like I did on that worksheet there, what I was following is the circle of fifths. And if you look at the key of C at the top, I numbered all the intervals in the key of C. And the 5th note in the key of C is G. And G happens to be the next scale that I presented. The 5th note of G is D, and that's the next scale that's presented. And you can look up the circle of fifths online or look it up in my book. And it's a great way of organizing the keys so you can see how the scales move in fifths, as well as how those sharps increase with each movement through that cycle. I think it's a really great learning tool. I know a lot of folks use it for composing and just understanding different relationships between the keys. So I encourage you to check that out when you get a chance.
I created a page on my website that has jam tracks for the 12 major keys and also shows the scale patterns for the major scales up the neck. But before you learn each scale pattern, you may want to practice soloing in each key up the individual strings while saying the note names out loud, so you become more familiar with the names of the notes on each string as well as the names of the notes in each key. And the reason I suggest knowing the names of the notes on your guitar is so that you can apply all the music theory that you learn to your instrument. So here's an example of how to practice that. And I'm going to start on my high E string here. E, F, G, A, G, C, B, G, A, D, E. And when you feel comfortable with that, then add the notes on the second string. D, C, E, F, D, A, G, B. Here are some ideas you can use to help you master those scale patterns. And this is assuming that you've already memorized them and maybe you've been playing on them for a few months already. Now I'm going to be visualizing each one of these scale patterns, but I'm just going to be pulling out and playing the root notes for each one of those. And that just helps me kind of lock in their location on the neck. I think it's also a great technique exercise as well. Now you can do that, I just did that with the roots, but you could also do that, with the thirds of each one of those scale patterns. And then the third exercise would be to apply the circle of fifths to your studies. So let's say I started in the key of C and I'm going to play all the root notes for the key of C here, and then staying in that same position, I'm going to pull out all the root notes for G and then D and so on. And you could do that with the thirds or the fifths or the sevenths, however you like.
I posted some practice tips as well as this practice log for you on my website today. And I'm hoping that that'll just help you get organized and hold yourself accountable to achieving your goals. I think it's really important that every single time you sit down to practice, you have some clear goals in mind. And that could be like working out a chord transition or learning some new chord voicings or breaking down 2 measures of a really tough tune and doing your best to master them in that section of time. And I think that the clearer your goals are, the more capable you are going to be to achieve them. Now on my practice log, I write out 6 different items here, and then I practice each item for 10 minutes. And I might not do this all in 1 hour. I might do, 10 minutes in the morning, and then I find, 10 minutes here or there throughout the day to sneak all that in. And when I get all 6 items done and crossed off, then I get to practice whatever I want.
We constructed the previous keys using sharps, and with these keys we're going to be using flats. And for right now, that's kind of just because I say so. So I'm going to follow those same 3 steps. So first I'm just going to write out the notes, the natural notes, in ascending order, starting from F, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Second step is to drop down those half-step reminders because that is our formula for the major scales. Third step is to analyze each pair of notes. So F to G is good, G to A is good, A to B, we need a half step there. And so I'm going to lower that B, this time using the flat sign there. I'm going to lower that B to B flat. That gives me the whole step I need between B flat and C. C to D, D to E, and E to F are all cool. They fit the formula. So there you go. All right, let's do another one. B flat, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B flat. I'm just writing out the names of those natural notes in ascending order. Next step is to drop down those half-step reminders. This is our formula for a major scale. And third, we're going to analyze and make any adjustments necessary. So B flat to C is a whole step, so we're good. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step, but we need a half step, so I'm going to lower that E to E flat. That gives us the whole step we need between the E flat and F. F to G, G to A to B flat, all fit the formula, so we're good. I want to do one more, which is the key of C flat. And we're going to look at the key of C up there at the top. And the key of C has no sharps or flats in it. So if we lower that first note to C flat, then all the other notes in that scale also need to be lowered by a half step in order for it to fit the formula. So we end up with C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, and C flat. And remember, each one of those letter names needs to be represented one time and only one time.
When you were constructing the flat keys, you probably noticed that each new key contained all of the previous keys' flats plus one additional flat. There's an order of these flats, and I use the word bead in the phrase greatest common factor, which I can't really tell you what that means anymore, but it's a catchy phrase that helps me remember the order of the flats, which is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, F flat. So if somebody were to say to me or signal to me on the bandstand with two fingers going down, then I would know that we're in the key of B flat because we've got two flats, B flat and E flat. And in flat keys, it's the second to the last flat in the key signature that tells you what the name of the key is. And for the circle of fourths, you could look at the key of C and notice that the fourth note in the key of C is F. So there's our next key. The fourth of F is B flat, and so on. So there's your circle of fourths. I made this worksheet for you. It's on my website. It's got a bunch of chord voicings on here. And I'm hoping that these will inspire some of your riffs for this week. Now, I purposefully omitted the names of the chords as well as the root notes on there because I just want you to go into this with very open ears and not be, tied down to anything, any preconceived notions about these chords at all. Later on, we'll get under the hood and dissect them and those chord progressions on there. But for right now, just follow your ears and put these in combinations that make sense to you. I think it's really important to understand that music theory always follows good music. So just try to make some good music, and then later on, we'll check some stuff out and you'll have those aha moments of why something sounds cool to you, where your ear is taking you. So for right now, just have fun with these and keep studying those major scales, keep studying the fretboard, because those are the building blocks that we need to really unpack what's going on here.
There are several kinds of triads, but we're going to focus just on the major and the minors because those are the ones that are most common. And the formula for a major triad is just the first, third, and fifth degrees from the major scale. So if I look over here, I'm just going to pull out the G, the B, and the D because those are my first, third, and fifth degrees of that G major scale. So G, B, and D. So there's your G major chord right there. Now, to construct a minor triad, all you need to do is lower the third degree by a half step. So we end up with G, B flat, and D. For the D major, it's going to be that same formula. So the 1, 3, and 5. So we have D, and then that'll be F sharp and A. And then for the D minor triad, we're going to lower the third, that F sharp, down a half step, and that becomes the note F. And our fifth stays the same, which is A. So there's your D minor triad. If you've been playing guitar for a while, you've already been playing some triads. This G chord here is a triad. We just have 3 different notes in it, G, B, and D. And yes, some of those notes are duplicated, but again, they're just those notes, G, B, and D. Specifically, we have G, B, D, G, B, G. This C chord is a triad. It just has 3 notes, C, E, and G. This D chord is a triad, D minor is a triad, E minor is a triad. All these open chords that are just major or minor, those are triads. Your major and minor bar chords, those are also just triads, so just 3 different notes in those. 7th chords are something different, and we'll get into that in a bit. And with triads, we also have inversions, and that's something else that we'll get into. I want to do another lesson on that. It's really important that you know your triads, that you can name those notes, because that's what you're going to rely on when you are chord tone soloing, which we'll get to later on.
An inversion refers to the order of notes in a chord. If I'm working with a C chord, I've got 3 notes, C, E, and G. And if I play those in that order, with C being my lowest note, so C, E, G, that's called root position. And there's a few different places you can play that C chord in root position. Now, if I were to start with the third, which is the note E, and I play E, G, C, now I've got what we call first inversion. And here's a couple of different places you can play those notes. If I started with the 5th degree, which is the note G, and I play G, C, E, now I've got what we call second inversion, and there's a few different places you can play those second inversion chords. I think it'd be great to work out, just a C chord in all of the places, just like I did, and then maybe go for an F chord and try to change back and forth between those two, then go through the rest of the keys, and then try the minor triads. So most of the chords in that example are from Group 1 of Day 13's PDF, which is on my website. And these are triads, but they're using larger intervals just to create kind of a spacier sound. And I didn't write in the root notes or the functions of those notes because I want you to figure that out, and I think that's going to help you unlock a lot of stuff on guitar. It's also a lot of work, so I want to get you started here. The first chord I'm thinking of is a G chord in root position, and my notes are G, D, and B. The next chord I'm thinking of is a G chord in first inversion, and I've got the notes B, G, and D. The next chord is a G chord in second inversion, and I've got the notes D, B, and G. And then that next group of three, I'm thinking of these as A minor chords. So here's A minor in root position, and then A minor in first inversion, and then A minor in second inversion.
Here's a C major scale: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And we're going to figure out which chords are in the key of C. And to do that, we're going to harmonize each one of these scale tones here with thirds. And I'm going to have you refer to Day 14's PDF that you filled out. And we're gonna use some detective work here and figure out which chords are major and which chords are minor. So the C, E, and G, that's a major chord. I'll give you that one. For the next one, we have the notes D, F, A. And again, you're going to look at that worksheet there for D major and look at the D major and D minor triad, and then you'll determine if D, F, A are a major chord or a minor chord. You'll do that for the next one too. So we have E, G, and B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, and B, D, F, that's a diminished chord we'll get to later, and then we have another C, E, G. If you haven't done your homework, please go do your homework. I'll still be here when you get done, but I'm about to give you all the answers for these. The first chord, we have the notes C, E, G, and that spells a C major chord. D, F, and A gives us a D minor chord. E, G, and B gives us a minor chord. F, A, C gives us a major chord. G, B, D gives us a major chord. A, C, E gives us a minor chord. B, D, F is a diminished chord like I mentioned, and then we have C, E, G just to make it sound nice. So we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then C. And we're going to number these chords as well. Our 1 chord is major, 2 chord is minor, 3 chord is minor, 4 chord is major, 5 chord is major, 6 chord is minor, 7th chord is diminished, and that's just a repeat. You can get this PDF on my website, and it's a chart that'll help you harmonize all of the major scales. By having this chart completed, you'll be able to transpose chord progressions to different keys and also figure out what keys certain chord progressions are in. It's a very valuable tool. You're going to use those major scale worksheets that you've already completed, and all we're going to do is drop down each major scale in the appropriate spot and notice whether it's major or minor based on the upper or lowercase Roman numeral above. So for the key of G, that gives us G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and F sharp diminished. So let's say that we had a 1-4-5 chord progression in the key of C. That would mean that we have C, F, and G. And that's because C is our 1 chord, and F is our 4 chord, and G is our 5 chord. If you're unfamiliar with those Roman numerals, I'll just write the Arabic numbers on top. And let's say we wanted to transpose that to the key of G. Well, our 1 chord in the key of G is G, and our 4 chord in the key of G is C, and our 5 chord in the key of G is D. Now we have that same chord progression in the key of G. I'll show you a way to develop some melodic lines while you're playing triads. I'm going to refer to one of the chord progressions that I laid out for you yesterday in the article I posted. And I'm just going to take the first 2 chords, which is a 1 chord going to a 3 chord. So I'm going to play B flat, which is 1, and then D minor, which is my 3rd in that key. And I'm also just going to use the D, G, and B strings. I'm going to start by playing the 2nd inversion B flat chord because that's the lowest one I can play on the neck. I'm going to follow that with root position B flat, higher up on the neck. And then I'm going to play the closest D minor possible using smooth voice leading. And then I'm going to play the lower D minor. So I've got this, what I think is a really nice movement. And then I can take that idea up. I could start here, play the next B flat, play the closest D minor, and then shift that down. And I could continue up one more. So let's say we have a chord progression A, E, B minor, and D, and you're soloing over that. Maybe you're using just your major scale, in the key of A, or up and down those single strings like we've talked about. And when you're doing that, maybe you're noticing that you feel stuck. You're doing a lot of the same things. You're not hitting the notes that you're going for, that kind of thing. What my first piece of advice is for those students is to sing while you're playing. Try to find those notes and do that really slowly. That is going to connect you to your instrument. That's going to connect the music you hear in your head to your instrument. And it takes a while to get the hang of it, but just try to match those pitches as best you can. So what you find when you do that is that over the A chord, you're probably going to be playing lots of A, C sharp, and E's. Over the E major chord, you're probably going to play lots of E, G sharp, and B's. Over the B minor chord, you're probably playing lots of B, D, and F sharps. And over the D major chord, you're probably playing lots of D, F sharp, and A's. And those are kind of our skeleton notes. Those are the notes that, we want to build on. They're not the end-all, be-all notes, but those are real nice anchors to be soloing with. To study those, there's, if you want a methodical way to study that, that's what my book, The Guitar Lesson Companion Volume 2, is all about. But if you don't want to, get too involved in that, you can just trace these triads. Just find them under your fingers when you're soloing, kind of visualize them, and try to hit some of those notes. When students ask me if there's a chord book that I recommend, I usually encourage them just to make their own. That's something that I did when I was first learning. I found a bunch of formulas for chords, and then I just mapped out chords all over the neck and kind of found ones that I like to use and started using those. When I teach this, though, I like to have some kind of system for categorizing these chords, and I encourage people to use the caged system. That's based off of, the chords C, A, G, E, and D in open position. And each one of those chord shapes is a movable form. And from those movable forms, you can find other chords. So this C major could turn into a C major 7. Here's a C major. Here's a C major 7. C major, C major 7. C major, C major 7. C major, C major 7. There's a worksheet on my website for you, and it's pretty sparse, like a lot of my materials are, just because I find that, you're going to learn the most if you figure this out on your own. But I know for me, I went down a lot of wrong paths, and, maybe my chord notebook wasn't the most efficient way to learn all these chords, but it did help me. And I just think having some kind of guide rails on this is really important. I once went, a year in between guitar lessons, and I misunderstood the assignment, and I wasted so much time and energy. And so I like to have guardrails. I like to have students kind of checking in with me about this stuff to make sure they don't make the same mistakes that I've made. Hopefully that worksheet makes sense. If you guys want more info on the cage system, leave a note in the comments, and I can do another lesson on that. But I'm assuming a lot of people already know about that.
So I'm looking at day 13's PDF. We've got a 1 dominant 6 2 5, or G6 E7 A minor 7 D7, and I want to show you a few different ways to comp through this. First way is just big band chord voicings, mostly quarter notes, and I'm accenting on beats 2 and 4. 1 2 3 4. Second way is to use hybrid picking. That involves using the pick and your fingers. I'm grabbing the low note, the bass note there, the root note, with my pick, and I'm using my third and fourth fingers to get those middle strings. You can use whatever kind of works for you, but I kind of like that sound. And along those lines, you can half step from either above or below each root note there to get a walking bass line kind of sound. So we could do, if I'm half stepping into each chord, or from above,
B, C, and D start us off. Then I'm thinking of E minor 7 with an A string root. My pinky grabs the note A and also the note E on the B and G strings there. Then I'm thinking of D minor 7, but the way I play this chord is I first release that second finger, so I get that note E on top, and then I play the F and the G using hammer-ons. And then I'm doing a C major 7, but I do that hammer-on technique again, where I'm first releasing my pinky, and then I play that third, which is E, with my pinky on the 5th fret of the B string. The other chords that I'm playing for this are inversions of G major 6 chord or C major 7. I'm just kind of going around because I think that those are pretty, and then I end on an E minor 9. My students are probably tired of me saying this, but all notes are good notes. It's just a matter of playing them with intention and authenticity. And to create a better relationship with each one of those notes, I've done this exercise for years where I just record myself playing a drone. Here I'm playing an octave. I'm playing C and C. And then in the example, I'm just soloing on the B string, playing all those notes over that note C and really listening to each one of those notes. And each note has a different characteristic that evokes a different feeling for me. And so I think I go through all 12 notes, in that 1 minute span there. And I'm just playing up and down that fretboard. I'm thinking a little bit of the modes and kind of some ideas I want to get at, just as an example for you. But really, I just want you to experiment. Like, how does this note sound over that drone? How does this note sound? How does this note sound? Really get into it. They're all good. That tune was Autumn Leaves, and I'm applying a few different concepts. One is chord punches. Chord punches I like to throw in when I'm playing melodies, like here. Those chords would be the punch part of that. I don't know why it's so brutal, but we're going to punch those chords in there. And then the other concept is that I'm using 3s and 7s. So I've got, instead of these big giant chords here, I'm just pulling out the most important notes there, which is the 3 and the 7. So for that C minor 7, I'm going to pull out B flat and E flat on the D and G strings there. And then when that chord changes to F7, I'm just going to move that B flat down to A, and then I'm going to keep that E flat there on top. And those just give you some more sparse chords that are great if you're playing with a keyboard player, another guitar player. But I used them here just because I think they're nice little punches there. There's a PDF on my website for you to construct some 7th chords. I've got major 7s, dominant 7s, minor 7s, minor 7 flat 5s, otherwise known as half diminished chords, and I also included diminished 7 chords. Those are pretty interesting, and those kind of show up from time to time in cool ways. Below that, I've got another chart for you to fill out with the harmonized major scales. This time you want to map those out to the 7th. So the way that works in the key of C, as listed on the PDF there, is we end up with C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, B half diminished or minor 7 flat 5, and C major 7. And notice on that chart that I'm listing a couple different symbols for those chords. The triangle means major, the dash means minor, the circle is diminished, and if it has a line through it, it's half diminished. I'm looking at day 13's PDF on chord shapes, and I'm going to break down group 3. As written, these chords are what I played in that example. The only thing I added was with that last chord, I took it down a half step and then brought it back up. And these are very rich chords. I think of each one of these chords having 3 different names, and therefore 3 different functions and a chord progression. This first chord, I view it as a B flat major 6. You can also see it as a G minor 7 or an E flat major 9, because all those notes are represented. And then each one of these other voicings on there is just an inversion of those same notes. So the order of the notes has changed, but it's still just those same notes, B flat, F, G, and D. So I want to break down that concept of inversions. I'm thinking of this as a B flat major 6 chord. I've got B flat, F, G, and D. And one way to work up these inversions is to think of the next chord tone available on each string and then place your fingers there. So let's do that. So B flat is my root note, and the next note in that B flat major 6 chord, if I just am spelling those notes, is D, and D is right here. So that'll be where my finger goes for that next chord. I have the note F here on the D string, and so the next note in the chord is going to be G, so that'll bring me right there. I have an open G here, and the next note that I need to hit that's in the chord is B flat, so I'll be there. And then on the B string, my note is D, and I'll need that note to be raised to an F. So here is my next inversion for that. And you could work that out one at a time, but I did give you those shapes there so you can double check. I think of natural minor scales in two ways, either as being relative or parallel. And when we think of a scale as being relative, that means it relates back to what I call a parent scale, and in this case, a major scale. The C major scale has no sharps or flats, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And if we were to start and stop that scale on the note A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and notice I kept that same key signature, no sharps or flats, we would have an A natural minor scale. So it's always the 6th degree in a major scale that gives us that relative minor. For parallel scales, we're going to be comparing them to their corresponding minor scale, so C major to C minor. For the C minor scale, we'll lower the 3rd, 6th, and 7th from a major scale. So we would have C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Once you've constructed all of the natural minor scales, you can drop them into today's PDF worksheet, which has a section for harmonized natural minor scales. And then you'll have the harmonies for all of your minor keys. We did the major keys a while back. I also want to say that I did flesh these out to 7th chords, so you could always take them back to triads if you want to simplify those and not use 7th chords for all of your minor chord progressions. And while you can write songs now in major keys and minor keys, you could also borrow chords from either key. So I could write a song in the key of C major. Let's say I'm pulling out the C major chord, the F major chord, and the G major chord. But then I could pull some from the natural minor scale, the C natural minor scale. So I could add A flat and B flat. So then my chord progression, C, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C. I'm looking at Day 13's PDF, and we're covering chord shapes on Group 4. This is a 2-5-1 chord progression. The first row of chords, I'm thinking of D minor 7. These are all D minor 7 chords. I'm using the cage system, so I have an A string root, a G string root, and an E string root. The G7 chords on that second line, I'm pulling out the 3 and the 7 there, so I have B and F. And then I'm throwing in some altered tones, so I've got the sharp 9 and a sharp 5. Next chord, I'm still playing G7. I've got F, which is my flat 7, B, which is my 3rd, D sharp, which is my sharp 5, and A flat, which is my flat 9. Next chord stays the same except for that high A flat there, which I release to G. Then I play the note F in the riff there, and then I'm going from a C major 6 to a C dominant 7 to a C major 7. That was a 12-bar blues in the key of C. So we had C7, F7, and G7. You've got all those chord tones written out on another sheet, I believe, so you're good to go there. I played a couple other things. I would half step into thirds. So the 3rd of C is E. So instead of just playing that E, I'd play E flat into E. And another thing I did over the F7, I played F, F sharp, F. I think my lick was... So something like that. Those are two ideas you can do that break you out of those chord tones. Now I do this in open position. That's the way that I teach chord tones. I found it to be more effective than teaching patterns for arpeggios. And the reason why is because you're really focused on the names of the notes and the function of those notes, whereas here you can just kind of get lost in those patterns. And that tends to lead to playing repetitive ideas, so playing the same thing over the same chord every single time. It doesn't always happen, but that's something that I try to watch out for.
Today's lesson riff is on my website. I've got some PDF samples from my book, and you'll see lesson videos and audio tracks. Basically, you can take a look at the whole free 5-year online guitar course that I offer and, see what you think. I really was excited to do this challenge because I love this community and I thought I might have something valuable to offer y'all. But it was also very risky because I didn't want to come off as being like, hey, I know the right way to play and that's the only way. Because that's exactly the opposite of how I feel. So it felt like taking a risk, and when y'all were, commenting and liking and tagging me in your posts, it felt incredible, and it just, made me want to give even more, so thank you. To be honest, another reason why I wanted to do this challenge is to reach a wider audience. I had a goal of, getting 1,000 subscribers, building trust, and selling a bunch of guitar method books to people who really dug my teaching style. And I got close to 1,000, and I'm really happy about that. So thank you if you've recently signed on to my IG. I see these guys on Instagram who are selling their guitar programs and stuff, and they're way better sellers than I am. I'm really concerned about each student finding the right method book or program or teacher that's best for them. And so me selling a lot of books that's not my goal. My goal is to really help the right people who can benefit from my teaching materials. Offering accessible music education is something that I've been concerned with my whole life, pretty much. Even when I was teaching at Seattle U, I started a community program there. I offered free classes out of my private studio, and I also have a free online program. I designed the Guitar Lesson Companion to be used by students who are studying with a teacher because that's the best way to learn the instrument. You've got that accountability, those weekly assignments, and the ability to ask somebody questions and make sure you don't develop any bad habits along the way. Every teacher has a unique way of prioritizing and explaining and applying musical concepts. But most teachers agree that there's certain fundamental concepts that everybody needs to know. And my book series just takes those fundamental concepts, gives way too many exercises so that teachers have a real flexible method book they can use with a variety of students, and really takes a student from the beginning levels of playing into the advanced levels of playing. It doesn't tell anybody how to teach, but it just presents all the stuff. And that's something that was really missing when I first started teaching, and that's the main reason why I wrote this book. And I think I also wanted to help out my teacher friends.